So Fire Emblem is kind of limited as a storytelling medium, right? Like 90% of the text in these games is dialogue, so you can't really describe what characters are doing, and it's hard to show what they're doing if you're on a budget. On top of that, you need to split the dialogue between just way too many characters. I don't know how many characters are normally in a piece of classic literature, but it's probably less than 32, the number of characters in the smallest playable cast in Fire Emblem history. I think you really need to be a certain kind of person to get the most out of FE stories. The kind of person that loves digging into all the side content to learn about all the minor characters, even if the main characters are kind of underdeveloped. That's definitely what I was like as a teenager, but as I've grown older and my tastes have shifted, I've grown fonder of a different type of character. One that doesn't care if a protagonist is boring, but also doesn't require you to read a bunch of side content. A killer villain can really get my gears turning. Fire Emblem has had a lot of classic villains over the years, and we'll get to those, but imagine my reaction when I popped open a Fire Emblem ROM hack and I came face to face with her. But we can't talk about her yet. First, we need to set the scene. The world of Shackled Power feels like it's playing out in the aftermath of another, sadder Fire Emblem story. The nations of Birene and Gothen have been stuck in a blood feud between monarchs for some time now. The land has been ravaged, and the people downtrodden, not just by constant invasions, but also by the neglect of their rulers, who only care about extracting the land's resources to feed the war machine. This only ended when Aster, the king of Birene, finally slew Gustav, the king of Gothen. Enter our hero, Prozel. He didn't choose to be a part of this royal drama, but being the son of the king of Birene comes with a cost. She is the widowed queen of Gustav, and since the love of her life was brutally killed, she's made it her mission to exact her vengeance on the entire Birenean royal family. Before the events of this story, she killed Prozel's mother right in front of him, and now she's unsealed an ancient and powerful weapon. The Imprisoner Whip, infused with the soul of the Demon King, has the power to raise an army of undead soldiers, and she plans to use it to finish the job. But we can't talk about her yet. First, we need to get through her lackeys. Shackled Power has a very unique approach to its minor villains. Nearly every villain past the halfway point is a character that you've seen multiple times. In this 33 chapter hack, by the time you've hit chapter 14, you know this boss's name, what her job is, what her personality is like, and most importantly, how she relates to the other villains in this story. Knowing this much about a boss this early is really unusual. In the vanilla games, a villain like this would be some big bookend to a story arc, but for Prozel, this is just Tuesday. He's gonna stomp this boss who had a ton of story build-up like it's nothing. Then he's gonna go into chapter 15 and do it again. Then he's gonna go into chapter 16 and do it again. And by bringing up that all these villains think and talk about each other, I'm not trying to say that this is just idle support conversations between characters with an expiration date. I'm saying that these are people trying to twist this war to their advantage. And if that involves manipulating each other, that's what they're going to do. Every villain in Shackled Power has their own agenda, and no one exemplifies that better than my favorite villain of the bunch, Fulshire. Fulshire makes a very bombastic entrance into Shackled Power. The invincible superboss of Chapter 2, he beats the shit out of Prozel for daring to stop his theft of the Imprisoner Whip. He strikes a very intimidating figure with his ridiculously jacked stature and his unsettling bird mask. But honestly, at the time I didn't think that much of him. Shackled Power is a game that really wears its influences on its sleeve, and from its gelled up hairstyles to its Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles soundtrack, it's obvious that media from the 80s had a huge influence here. So when I saw Fulshire, I was expecting a character like Ivan Drago. Big dude, who doesn't talk much, because there's just not that much to him. I've never had a bigger character misread in my life. Throughout the midgame, it becomes clear that Fulshire's job in this war is going to be invading and occupying Canis, an allied city of our heroes. But he seems weirdly protective of this city, to the point of obsession. Even talking back to the Queen, he's not letting any villain that outranks him join him in the invasion, and he demands complete control of who lives and who dies in that city. A bit strange, but it doesn't make that much of a difference to Prozul, who liberates the city in Chapter 19, slaying this Goliath in the process. There's a lot to do after a city is liberated, so Prozul's army is off scrambling around, freeing political prisoners and chasing off the last of Gothan's forces. But in a quiet moment, Prozul approaches the body of Fulshire and goes to take off his mask. And underneath that mask, he finds the face of a man he does not know. Odin was once heir apparent to the military commander of Canis. A kind, gentle kid, he loved spending his days playing with his little sister. But Odin was born with a severe speech impediment, and his father hated him for it. He saw him as stupid, weak, an embarrassment to the family. Odin was never safe when he was around, and eventually his father had him sent to the middle of Gothan to be abandoned. He would have died had he not run into a kind stranger, Nestrix, a powerful sorcerer and leader of the Wasteland mercenaries. She took him in. She could treat him with love and could protect him from his father, something his little sister could never do. His speech improved. He was taught to fight. But Nestrix's toxic ideology wormed its way into his brain, and all the gentleness and kindness he used to have was replaced by envy and hatred. When he put on that mask and took on that name, he was unrecognizable in almost every way. But there was still some small part of him that couldn't fully accept Nestrix's ideas. He still loved his little sister and wanted her to grow into something amazing. So when it came time to return to Canis, he couldn't risk someone like Nestrix getting her hands on her. Fulshire is one of my all-time favorite villains, and without trying to overstep my bounds, one of the best characters with a disability that I've ever seen. His disability is always a part of him, but it does not define him. A lesser piece of fiction would have treated him as a victim, abused by his father and manipulated by Nestrix. There's a lot of reasons to just see him as someone who deserves pity, but that's not Fulshire. He wasn't some mindless pawn. He knew Nestrix, and he knew that if she got the chance, she would absolutely kill innocent people like his little sister. So he never gave her that chance. But he still never fully disagrees with her. Like her, he still thinks that humans are fundamentally evil and don't deserve any mercy. When he puts on that mask, he's not some selfless protector, and he's not a mindless victim. He's a man out for vengeance. When he gets control of Canis, he becomes obsessed with getting his hands on his father, making him pay for what he had done to him all those years ago. He's in City Hall, torturing him. Even as the battle rages on, Prozul shattering the city gates, it's all he can think about. Much like his queen, Fulshire allowed his sense of vengeance to completely consume him, and in the end, it became his undoing. Now, we're ready to talk about her. The major cast of villains in most Fire Emblem games draws some influence from the core triumvirate of FE3. You've got Hardin, the Mad Emperor manipulated into starting a war. Garneth, the puppet master who's using this war for a greater purpose. And Medius, the secret weapon, and a rampaging force of nature the heroes will have to stop before it's all over. This is a structure you'll see over and over in classic Fire Emblem games, and Shackled Power has it too. In fact, you've already met all of them. The Medius is the Demon King, Diragus, who spends most of the game trapped in the Imprisoner Whip, biding his time. The Garneth of this story is Nestrix, and the Harden is the Queen of Gothen herself, Birgitta. But don't let these archetypes fool you. Birgitta is not just some puppet. This war started with her, and she's not going to let anyone else end it. Nestrix tries to manipulate her, tries to make her fully dependent on the Imprisoner Whip, physically and mentally, so Diragus can possess her through the sword, but it doesn't work. Birgitta is nothing if not tenacious. When her guards inform her of Nestrix's plan, she tries to dismantle it by force, blasting herself and the Imprisoner Whip with searing holy light. It doesn't work, but the next attempt might. To stop that from happening, Diragus reaches out to her. He wants to strike a deal. He knows he's been beaten. Her will is strong. Her rage is pure. There's no insecurities he can latch onto to pry open her mind, and he has respect for the death and carnage she's brought to the world. So with their powers united, it's now Birgitta's turn to play with the witch who treated her as a toy. Birgitta awakens from her divine light-induced coma. Her eyes a sickly, ghoulish yellow. Nestrix is won. She taunts Birgitta's bodyguards. They exposed her plans too late. No human can stand up to the corrosive power of the Demon King. The house always wins, she thinks. Birgitta grabs her, slams her against the wall. Birgitta's eyes may have a golden, reptilian glow, but behind them is only her. Fire Emblem doesn't have the best tools for visual storytelling, but this scene is amazing for doing so much with so little. Some moving map sprites, some changing portraits, and some very strong directing is all it takes for your imagination to fill in the gaps. Birgitta doesn't need to say a single word. She effortlessly tells the viewer everything you need to know. You don't fuck with the Queen. Birgitta has more than earned this place, atop this hierarchy of villains, and she uses it to challenge our hero in a few important ways. She combats Prozul not just physically, but mentally. She tries to drag him down into the cycle of vengeance that has totally consumed her. We've already talked about how she killed Prozul's mother, but throughout the actual events of the game, she's constantly toying with him. Playing with her food, she wants him to be beaten down until he's forced to stoop to her level. To defeat her, Prozul can't just defeat her in battle. He also needs to strike her down without vengeance in his heart. Even if he wins this war, if he kills Birgitta out of vengeance, he's perpetuating that same cycle, that same blood feud that took his mother's life. But unlike his father Aster, and unlike the Mad Queen, Prozul realizes that these wars affect more than just royalty, and he's able to put an end to this carnage once and for all. The Queen of Gothen is a truly amazing lead antagonist. There's a lot to like about Prozul and the crew that joins him, but Birgitta and the cast of nihilists and opportunists that she draws to her court really are the stars of the show in this game. They take advantage of the conventions of a typical Fire Emblem story brilliantly, using the game's heavy dialogue focus to add depth to each map, using the storytelling conventions of the vanilla games to set up your expectations before subverting them, and crafting a brilliant way to incorporate visual storytelling into the GBA engine with just a few simple sprite changes. Shackled Power is an amazing story from front to back, and I hope you'll get to enjoy it someday, if you haven't already. One last thing. If you want to play the game, don't be afraid to pick easy mode. This is a hard game. These villains will beat your ass if you're not careful.